Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 974 of the Juicebox Podcast. On today's episode, I'll be speaking with Rebecca. Now, in Rebecca's words, I am the wife of a type 1, mom of a type 1, mom of a Trialnet participant trying to prevent type 1, and a sister of a steroid-induced type 1. That sounds like an episode to me, kids. While you're listening, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. You want to save 40% off your entire purchase of sheets and towels and clothing at CozyEarth.com. You can by using the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout. You can get a free year supply of vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first order at drinkag1.com/juicebox. And of course, support the sponsors. Dexcom, what else? Gvoke HypoPen. You know, their links are in the show notes. All of the great sponsors that have been with the show forever. Click on those links in the show notes if you're going to make a purchase. And don't forget to find the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes on Facebook. Type 1, Type 2, doesn't matter to me. This episode of the Juicebox Podcast is sponsored by Dexcom. Dexcom, of course, makes the Dexcom G7 and G6 continuous glucose monitoring systems. Dexcom.com/juicebox. My daughter is wearing the Dexcom G7 and we love it. Go check it out at Dexcom.com/juicebox. The podcast is also sponsored today by US Med. usmed.com/juicebox. That's to get started. Or you could call 888-721-1514. Get your free benefits check today, and you'll be on your way getting your diabetes supplies the same way we do from US Med. usmed.com/juicebox.
Hi, I'm Rebecca. I'm from New Hampshire, and I live with two type 1 diabetics. My husband, Matt, was diagnosed back in 1975. My daughter is 9. She was just diagnosed last year. And then my son, Jack, who's 12, he has 5 antibodies and is currently in Trialnet. And then the wild card is my little sister is 30, and she was just diagnosed with type 1 in January of this year, so like 10 months ago.
All right, so
I have all these diabetics in my family.
I missed one. Matt, diagnosed in 75. He's your husband. Then there's there's a daughter?
My daughter, Kate, who's 9, and she was diagnosed last June.
Okay, a little over a year.
And then,
Jack is 12. He's in Trialnet because he's got all the markers. And
he's got all the markers.
He's getting diabetes for Christmas, probably.
Yeah.
And
no.
No? What do you think?
I hope not.
Valentine's Day? What do you and then your sister's 30, type 1, and you're here to say that no one should live in New Hampshire? Is that correct?
Well, my sister lives in Maine, so no one should live in New England. I don't know. Or no one should hang out with me, because I feel like in the last 18 months, it's just been like, don't talk to me because you're going to get diabetes.
Interesting idea, Rebecca. You're the problem. Is that right?
Yeah. I feel, when I emailed you, I said, I feel like a diabetes magnet, because in the last 18 months, it's just been a whirlwind and all I talk about is diabetes. So I was like, why don't I go talk to about diabetes with Scott? Because that's what he does for a living. So.
Apparently that's what you do with all of your time as well.
I do. I have a full-time job, but I feel like my part-time gig is, diabetes support.
What do you do full-time? Maple syrup?
No, I'm a data analyst for the federal government. So
how do you like that?
I like it. I work from home. It's great.
Can you get my son a job, please? He's sending out so many applications. No offense, I'm not going to interview you unless you get my kid a job. No, my son just graduated with a quantitative econ degree.
Yeah.
So he's picking around.
Federal government's hiring, so have him look for jobs.
I certainly will.
Federal government.
Actually, someone else who listens to the podcast sent me a suggestion of the same thing.
Yeah.
Said they said, I work for part of the government I'm not comfortable saying online, but we're hiring. And I was like, oh, what part of the government is that? I was like,
yeah.
don't think my kid.
Or not, yeah. Typically, we don't say that. I won't say it either. But yeah, have him look. Have him Google.
Oh, all right.
Great medical benefits, So if he ever gets diabetes, he'll be good to go.
Rebecca, I'm keeping him away from you. That's for sure. No kidding. Oh, all right. Let's figure this out. See, here's the interesting thing. Your husband is not related to your sister.
That's why she's the wild card.
or again, maybe why you are. You're like the house nobody moves into because of the electrical lines. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Do you ever feel guilty for not having diabetes?
Yeah, I actually did Trialnet for myself because I'm 44 and you have to be under 45 and have all these relatives. And I'm like, well, I have all these relatives, so why don't I, poke my finger and do Trialnet? Of course, I have nothing. I have no antibodies. I'm healthy. I have no thyroid issues. I have, I'm I have nothing.
But my question is, do you ever feel bad about it?
I do feel bad about it. I would take everyone's diabetes from them just to make their life easier. I feel like that's what I do instead, since I don't have diabetes. I'm like, well, I try to take a little bit of stress off them if I can.
Oh, they got a sucker on the line now, Rebecca.
I know.
Yeah.
You should look at my Follow app on Dexcom.
Do the beeps sometimes make music?
I actually had to change everyone's lows to different sounds so I wouldn't get confused on if it's my daughter at school, who's like my number one priority. Mm-hmm. My husband can take care of himself, and then my sister's new, and hers is a baby cry. So if the baby cries, I text her. I'm like, "Hey, you okay?"
All right. So if the baby cries, it's your sister. What's your husband's sound?
It's like the siren. It's like, ee.
Okay. Your husband is the British ambulance.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then my daughter's just the regular low because when she's home, she has her phone. So I didn't want to change it because I'm used to that sound.
I gotcha. My God. How old was your husband when he was diagnosed? It was in 75?
75. He was 2.5.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yeah. He had pneumonia and he was in the hospital and they just poked his finger or did something and he was diabetic. He didn't have DKA. He just had pneumonia.
Mm-hmm. Is there other autoimmune in his family?
Yeah. His family is
littered
with a bunch of different, like rheumatoid arthritis. His aunt had type 1 and rheumatoid arthritis. His mom has like Wegener's granular matosis or something, which is like a weird autoimmune disease.
Are the other ones normal? Hold on a second.
I feel like rheumatoid arthritis is pretty normal.
It's because you hear ads for it on TV. Hold on a second. What's the other one? The mom has
Wegener's granular mitosis. It's like inflammation in the blood vessels. Hers kind of manifested in the lungs, which is how they found it.
Yeah, at first I got Wegmans when I was Googling it first. I was like,
no, Wegman.
Wegener's. That's not it. Wait, granulomatosis?
Yeah.
Wegener's, that word, is a rare long-term systemic disorder that involves the formation of granulomas and inflammation of blood vessels, which is called vasculitis. It is a form of vasculitis that affects small and medium-sized vessels in many organs, commonly in the respiratory tract, lungs, and kidneys. What's the impact on her life?
She's good now. The acute onset was pretty severe. She was hospitalized, but she takes medication for it, and it's manageable. But it's on the list of autoimmune, just kind of rare. And then rheumatoid and type 1. His aunt had type 1.
Yeah, you came up with a new one today. Congratulations. We should have music and confetti should go off behind you, but I don't have that.
So my mother-in-law could come on chat about it. Yeah. Well, she's a superstar because she raised my husband and so my father-in-law also has type 2. He was actually the first Omnipod user in our family, so with type 2.
Oh my God. How much money do you think collectively you guys spend on diabetes here? 50?
50. Oh, I actually did the math because my sister and I have been chatting with local people, this whole insulin cap, price cap. I was like, so how much do we actually spend? Because I was curious. And just my family, so my daughter and my husband's diabetes costs $39,000 a year.
Yeah, I bet it does.
And then, ours is like a fraction because we have good insurance. But I actually looked at all of our receipts, and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah.
I'm so glad we have insurance.
Yeah, no kidding.
Because if we didn't, we'd be screwed.
Well, if you didn't, you wouldn't have CGMs and insulin pumps for sure, and all kinds of stuff like that.
Right. And we've been through that throughout, before we had good insurance, before we had good jobs. I've been with my husband 25 years, so we've been through all the phases of diabetes care, and we used to buy vials of insulin over the counter.
I remember you needed a prescription for the needles, but not for the insulin. Do you remember
exactly
that?
Yeah. Like we'd go on vacation, forget a vial, and we just go to CVS and ask for it. Right. It's pretty cheap.
Yeah,
it's not cheap anymore.
We didn't send enough insulin. It's not cheap anymore. We didn't send enough insulin with Arden to college because we didn't. The one, I've been saying this a lot lately, but the one thing I failed to prepare for sending her to school was that basically eating in the cafeteria was going to be like eating in a crappy restaurant every day.
Yeah.
So she's using more insulin. And so she texted me the other day. She goes, yo, I don't have enough insulin. I was like, I sent way too much. But I was like, oh, okay. So I look in the refrigerator. I have a couple vials. And I was like, but I was going to order it, have it to the house, and then, send it back with her when she went back again. But I was like, okay, I'll hold on. And I contacted the endo. And the endo said something that shocked the hell out of me, Rebecca. She said, you haven't been here in a year. And I was like, that's not true. Like, that's definitely not true. But I realized that the COVID thing rolled everything into, don't come here, Zoom with us. And then when you walk out, when you're in person, the last thing they do is they go, hey, when do you want to come back? And when you pick a date, except when you leave a Zoom, nobody asks you when you want to do this again. And I thought, oh, but we've been working so hard on Arden's digestion issues and her hormonal stuff over the last year. I feel like I've been to the doctor every 5 minutes. And so I just I'm so sorry, and she's like, well, I'm not supposed to give you the script. And I was like, well, just do it anyway, because Arden's in Savannah and, I'll make an appointment. So I made an appointment, and then I had to find a pharmacy. So I said to Arden, I was like, hey, what pharmacy should I send your prescriptions to? And she responded, I don't know. And I was like, well, is there one near your dorm? And she said, I don't know. And so I pulled up a map, and I'm like, there's one here, but, the town can get sketchy in certain directions. So I'm like, I don't want to just send her to, a war zone. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, well, how about where you get your groceries? I say, they have a pharmacy. I'll send it there. And she goes, if you think so. And I was like, okay, I see I'm in this on my own. Just get out of, but, they're going to send her a script for her whole 3-month supply of insulin. And then I don't know how the hell we're going to get it back here when she comes home. So I'm like, oh my God. Anyway,
She can fly. She can fly with all that.
Let me just tell you, Rebecca, she does not want to fly home after the quarter is over.
Okay.
Because she needs to bring clothes with her to swap for the seasons, she told us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we have to drive to Georgia to ship her, to bring her clothes back.
Oh, okay. We'll bring a big cooler. It'll be good to go.
And I pushed my wife on this, and I was like, we don't, just make her fly. And Kelly's like, well, she really wants to swap her clothes. I'm like, you just make her fly. Who cares?
Yeah, that's what FedEx is for.
Yeah, leave us out of this. Anyway, so I want to know, I'm going to pick through your husband a little bit, because that's a long ass time to have diabetes. So does he have any impure effects from type 1?
Yeah, he has some retinopathy that he gets laser treatments for. It's not to the point where he's blind or has even impaired vision, but
they saw it, and then they wanted to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So they do laser therapy, and they kind of zap the little blood vessels that are popped. And so he does that every year or two. He needs those zapped. He has some neuropathy in his feet and legs. Other than that, he has trigger finger, which I guess is pretty common with type 1s. I think his teens and 20s were a little rough. So
hey, wait a minute. He was 2.
Which was the 80s and 90s, if you think about it.
Yeah. Are you a trophy wife, Rebecca?
I met him when I was 20. He was 25. No.
No, you're not. Okay. No. I was trying to do the math real quick.
We were still kids. He was a friend of my college roommate's older brother, and we just met. And
at a granola party?
not really. No.
No. How New England are you? Do you need to comb your leg hair or like?
No.
No?
I was this was in New York. I went to Syracuse, and
Oh, fancy.
yeah, we met in Syracuse. Yeah.
Syracuse, like Syracuse is New York. You know what I mean?
Well, it's not New York City. So I feel like you say Syracuse, people know where it is.
I know where it is, 100%. Okay. So, all right. So you guys have been together for a long time. He's had diabetes for almost 50 years.
Right.
Which
yeah.
is
He just turned 50. Yeah.
Wow. That's well, good for him.
And I thought I knew a lot about diabetes because, I was married to I've been around for a long time. I've been dealing with his type 1, but he was 25 when I met him. So he kind of dealt with his own stuff, He's not a kid. He had it together, which I thought, he just took care of it. And then my daughter's diagnosed and I'm like, wait a minute, I don't know anything. And all these numbers that I didn't know 200 was bad. I knew high blood sugar was bad. I knew he would get grumpy in like the 200s, 300s. I'd be like, check your blood sugar. And I knew what low was. I knew how to deal with that. But in the real granularity of it, I did not know anything.
Wow, that's so super.
I didn't even know what bad A1C was.
That's super interesting. So when you met him, if you can remember back that far, because I'm having trouble remembering back that far, but do you recall, like when you're like, okay, I like a guy, he has diabetes, he uses insulin. Like, I understand that much. He must have gotten low at some point, so you had a feeling for that. But what did you expect the impact on your life was going to be? Everybody who has diabetes supplies, but not everybody gets them from US Med, the way we do. usmed.com/juicebox or call 888-721-1514. US Med is the #1 distributor for Freestyle Libre systems nationwide. They are the #1 specialty distributor for Omnipod DASH, the #1 fastest growing tandem distributor nationwide, and they always provide 90 days worth of supplies and fast and free shipping. That's right, US Med carries everything from insulin pumps to diabetes testing supplies, right up to your latest CGMs like the Freestyle Libre 2 and 3 and the Dexcom G6 and 7. They even have Omnipod DASH and Omnipod 5. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, and you can reach them at 888-721-1514 or by going to my link, usmed.com/juicebox. When you contact them, you get your free benefits check, and then if they take your insurance, you're off and going. And US Med takes over 800 private insurers and Medicare nationwide. Better service and better care is what US Med wants to provide for you. usmed.com/juicebox. Get your diabetes supplies the same way Arden does from US Med. Links in the show notes. Links at juiceboxpodcast.com to US Med and all of the sponsors. When you use my links, you're supporting the show. Now let's talk about the Dexcom G7. The Dexcom G7 is a small and wearable continuous glucose monitoring system. It sends real-time glucose readings to your Dexcom G7 app or the Dexcom receiver. Use my link, dexcom.com/juicebox to learn more and get started today. You will be able to effortlessly see your glucose levels and where they're headed. This way you'll be able to make better decisions about food, insulin, and activity. Once you're able to see the impact that those variables have on blood sugar, you'll begin to make more purposeful decisions and have better outcomes. My daughter has been wearing a Dexcom product for so many years, I don't even remember when she started. But today she wears the Dexcom G7, and it is small and easy, and oh my goodness, are you going to love it. Dexcom.com/juicebox. You can head there now and click on the button that will get you your free benefits check, or just hit that other button that says get started. When you use my links, you're supporting the production of the podcast. Dexcom.com/juicebox.
My life?
Yeah.
I mean, we would just deal with, he taught me, when we first met and started dating, he taught me, where his glucagon was and, how to mix it and like where he kept it. And then he would showed me how to test his blood sugar. We partied. We were 20. So like, he's like, if I pass out, test my blood sugar. I was like, okay. If you drink too much.
Didn't scare you? You didn't think like...
No, I'm a really chill person. Like nothing. I'm pretty good in emergencies. Like it's fine. Like
you're a chill data analyst?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So you wouldn't be a good actuary then?
No, but like I picked this. I remember we were partying once, and I picked this. I thought he just fell asleep, but he was snoring really loud, and he wouldn't wake up. And so I picked his finger. He was like 500. So I actually at that point he was on NPH, R and NPH, and he had taught me how to mix them. So I drew it out, mixed them, and shot him up. And he woke up 2 hours later and 300s, and I was like, oh, I must have done the right thing.
I'm a wizard. I've done it.
But like overall impact, like we didn't get married. We just celebrated our 14th wedding anniversary. We didn't get married for like 10 years. I don't think I ever thought about it. Like we were going to have kids with diabetes.
Rebecca, are you a hippie?
Am I hippie? No,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Right.
I'm sure my parents would think so.
Oh, yeah?
I'm sure my parents would call me that. I think in the 90s, I was definitely like into Fish and, going to those big concerts. But I don't think I'm definitely not a hippie now. I'm like a suburban mom.
Do you think your parents have occurred to you as a vagabond in private ever?
No. Well, my sister lives on a farm, like 67 acres up in Maine. So I think she's way more on the hippie spectrum than I am. So
when Cole was recruiting for college baseball, a Maine team tried to get him to play there, and they called here. And I remember just watching him on the phone for half an hour, and he had this look of horror on his face the entire time. And he gets off the phone and he goes, well, here are the highlights. And I was like, okay. He goes, the field is heated and so are the dugouts. And he goes, why would that be necessary? And I was like, not sure. He goes, yeah. He goes, I mean the actual turf. The turf is heated. And I was like, right. He goes, what? Go ahead, Rebecca.
So the snow will melt. Come on. It still snows into May.
He's like, that didn't sound good. Then he goes, then there was a big selling point where the coach said, we all go on a hunting trip together after the season. And Cole's like, do I have to shoot something to play baseball in college? Because I don't want to do that either. And I was like, yeah, I don't think this place is for you.
Yeah.
Anyway, it sounded like he was going to Canada.
I grew up in Maine. I love it. But New Hampshire's great.
Yeah.
It's not that far from New Jersey, really. The weather, I feel like, is the same.
I don't know.
It's still cold and icy. And
oh, my God. When we went on that tour up there, there was a school in Vermont that wanted him to play there, too. And we went there to work out in the wintertime in an indoor facility. And just walking from like the hotel to the car, he's like, I'm not coming here. And I was like, no, I didn't think you were. I was like, just go finish the workout and we'll get the hell out of here. Anyway, okay, so your husband's got all that going on. You don't know, I was going to curse. You don't know anything about diabetes, basically. And that goes on for decades like that? He just takes care of himself?
Well, so he just took care of his stuff. He'd go to the endo. I never asked him what his A1C was. Again, like he just took care of his stuff, like he's a grown up.
Is that how he wanted it?
Yeah, I mean, he did. He's always been kind of private about his diabetes. Like he didn't really, I mean, he would give insulin, give shots in public, and that's fine. But he never had tech. He never had a pump. Still doesn't have a pump.
But he wears the CGM.
This year.
Oh, because
I can tell you about. I can tell you that story.
Tell me.
Well, so we. Well, when my daughter was diagnosed, I think really quickly she realized, like, hey, why doesn't Dad have this Dexcom thing? And she would ask him about it. And also, like, he would always bolus, like, right when he ate, like, at the same time. And they teach us, with kids, like, pre-bolus for the spike. And she's like, why doesn't Daddy pre-bolus? Why doesn't Daddy have a Dexcom? So I think we had a chat, like, hey, you're a role model for her. We got to, you need to, if we're going to make her pre-bolus, you need a pre-bolus.
Yeah. So Kate's, like, diagnosis kind of forced him into the present with taking care of his diabetes.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also, we went to Disney for the first time in May, and we were talking about that whole trip. And that's actually what triggered. He actually got the Libre 2 first. Mm-hmm. His endo gave him a Libre 2, and he used that for Disney. And then he just got the Dexcom in, I think, July.
Okay.
Because the Libre 2 is garbage. No offense, Libre. Sorry. I hope they're not a sponsor, but
well, they're not
just for him.
They're not now. No, I'm just kidding. They're not.
No, they're just for him. It wasn't great. It was always off, and the alarms are not helpful. Like they just kind of alarm that he's high or low. It doesn't give you a number. So he switched over to Dexcom in July, and I think he likes it. I mean, he doesn't like stuff stuck to him, but I think it does help with the lows, and now he can see his highs, like what happens overnight and what happens between meals. And
I laughed a minute ago, Rebecca, and it was not at you. I was picturing the low-level PR person that I'm sure the Libre people forced to listen to this podcast.
I was like, crap, we're not
going to imagine them sitting at their desk going, no, stop. No, don't stop.
I'm curious about that new one though. That like gives the
Libre 3
reading every minute. Yeah, it's tiny. Yeah.
No, they're getting there. They really are. I mean, it cannot hurt to have competition. That's for sure. That's
what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now he has a Dexcom. His A1C is 7, which I think is the best in his adult life. Okay. I remember numbers. So I remember like 15 years ago, him telling me a number like 8 or 8.5, and I don't know what that. I didn't have context, so I was like, okay.
Did you not want to know?
I guess again, he was just took care of it. I mean,
okay. I'm not, Rebecca. I'm not coming down on you. I'm just trying to find out. And so like, here's what I guess what is my question here. So you weren't pressing to find out. You could have used the internet to learn, right? But I
could have.
Yeah, you were just like whatever. And now like. But he's got a 7. Like if your daughter what's your daughter's A1C?
6.5.
Okay. If your daughter took care of herself the way your husband did, how many towns would you burn down to fix
I know, I would.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Well, and then again, like he has a mom, so like
this is her problem.
Like that's the thing. Like when you're someone's wife, you're not their mother. Like
that's really making me laugh for some reason. That's her son, not mine. I just need that guy to buy stuff. I mean, you've been married a long time. You don't even need him for sex anymore, really. So, I mean, it's basically fix the bathroom. You know what I mean? Yeah.
That's what he's doing. He's remodeling the kitchen right now. So.
Is anyone else ever amazed when I say things that I have no idea about, and people are like, "Oh, yeah, that is actually happening in my life right now."
Yeah, that is actually.
Stuns me. When
no, but I think like my daughter's diagnosis really did. I think he said he was. I mean, burnout's a real thing, and I think he was kind of in a burnout place. So
no, I understand. So do you think
it rejuvenated his like? Oh yeah, I gotta be a good role model for her.
Right. Do you think he uses a pump at some point?
I don't know. I keep pushing it because I think it would help. He has some crazy swings. And I was like, wouldn't it be great if you could turn off your basal right now?
Oh, I see. Passive aggressively trying to get him to use a pump.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
Well, now that I know stuff, because in the last 16 months, I feel like I got like a crash course in diabetes. And I was like, wow, I knew nothing. 0 before this.
Rebecca, have you guys been together too long that you can't just use the girls to make this happen? You know what I mean? I don't understand. If I was a woman, this is how I would handle everything. I know it's wrong to say, but I know I would. I know I'd be a girl who would like tie up a shirt and wear a push-up bra and ask for the kitchen to be remodeled. I know I would.
You need a pump here. No.
Hey, sweetie, you need a pump.
If he wants to get a pump, because I'm happy with the Dexcom. I feel like the Dexcom
good leap for
can
him.
Be life-changing.
Yeah,
so.
I bet he comes along to it at some point.
Yeah.
I really do.
And I think the Omnipod 5, so my daughter has Omnipod 5, and I think I'm selling that to everyone I know, and I think that technology may entice him.
Good. That's excellent. Okay, so let's find out about your daughter's diagnosis.
Okay.
I mean, did you ever think, well, my husband has type 1 diabetes, there's people on his side of the family with type 1, clearly our kids are going to get type 1, or did you not think of it that way?
No, I thought even when I was pregnant, I like Googled it, and it was like, I think when I Googled it, it was like 7% or 10% or something. Whatever I read said 10%. I'm like, oh, 10%, no biggie. I can handle that. And so when they were little, when my kids were little, every time they would get sick or they would wake up from like a night terror and just were were screaming for no reason, we'd poke their finger and test their blood, because I was like, if you're throwing up or you're screaming for no reason, there's something wrong. And I mean, their blood sugars were fine. And my daughter, so she was in first grade, and I think we even poked her finger like 3 or 4 months before she was diagnosed. I think she got sick. We poked her finger. She was fine. And then it was the end of the school year. She had done her first week of summer camp, and she was at summer camp that whole week. She had been, running around like crazy, at summer camp. And I was thinking, she's really tired. She's really tired. She was wetting the bed like epically. And I was like, oh, she's so tired. Like, she's not getting up in the night. That's, crazy. And then the last day we're driving her up to summer camp, and she gets out of the car, to bring her over to the counselors. And I put her water bottle back in her bag. And I'm like, honey, did you drink your entire water bottle on the way here? She's like, yeah, I'm thirsty. I was like, that's really weird. And so that's what clicked in my head. Like, oh, wait a minute. Like, so when but I didn't, I was like, oh, well, she's fine. We'll check her blood sugar when we get home. Well, that night I forgot about it. And then at night we gave her pizza. Every Friday we give pizza. And then at bedtime I was like, oh yeah, she drank all that water. I need to check her blood sugar. So we pulled out our extra meter and checked her blood sugar, and it just said high. And I just I instantly knew. I was like, oh, she's diabetic. Like, but like heart, like it's like I just knew.
Yeah.
But it was like 9:00 at night. So I just called the nurse's line at the pediatrician, because I'm like, what do we do? Do we go to the doctor? She's fine. Like, she's jumping around, but she's not throwing up. She's not. Like, what do we do? So I called the nurse's line, left a message. They didn't get back to me till the next morning, and they're like, you need to go to the emergency room. And of course, then I felt like the worst mother ever, because I was like,
Wait, did your husband have no input on this?
Oh no, I mean, he was like, it was just that night that we were talking about it, and I was like, did you notice she's drinking a lot? And then when we took the high, I was like, what do we do? And he was like, I don't know, what do we do? I was like, do we go to the emergency room? Do we go to
Rebecca, he must make a ton of money. That's all I'm saying. Also, I like
my only solution was, well, I'll just leave a message at the pediatrician's office. And
again, you guys are funny. Can I ask 2 questions? I loved your phrasing. This isn't a question. Give pizza. We give pizza on Friday. That was a fascinating like sentence structure. My husband would call that a mainism, because I feel like we cut out a lot of words. My mom does the same thing. Well, it's
my
fantastic.
husband loves to mock me.
Well, we give pizza. I was like, what in the hell? And also, how do you get away with smoking weed when you have a government job? I don't understand.
I don't smoke any weed.
That's insane. That's not true. Are you drunk right now? Are you day drinking? What's going on, Rebecca? I love you.
Not at all.
You've got this New England vibe about you. How is that actually a thing? It's fascinating.
I don't know.
It really is fascinating.
I've lived here too long.
There's sisters that grew up around you that have been on the podcast. Have you heard them?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. At the end, I'm going to tell you who they are, because there's a moment where I'm like, am I talking to one of those girls right now? Like, I couldn't figure. You guys have like a very specific way about you. I love like the kids' blood sugar's high, and you're like, I called someone. It's like,
well, then of course the next morning they call me back, and they're like, oh, you need to go to the emergency room now. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, she's fine. Like, I mean, we were eating breakfast. I actually did check her fasting. I was like, oh, I should. In the morning, we checked her fasting. She was like 260. I was like, oh, we really need to do something. So when they called me back, they're like, go to the emergency room. Because I was thinking, oh, I just need an endo. This kid needs insulin. Like, I was kind of, I don't know. I didn't know what.
I know. I love you. I really do. I swear to you, I would.
So when your kid's not lethargic, I'm the kind of mom, like, if they have a fever, as long as they're not lethargic and they're not throwing up and listless, they're fine. They'll get their system will figure it out. It's when they're acting funny, and she was acting fine. She was acting totally normal.
I should have married you. I swear to God, like, I get my balls broken by a type A woman every 36 minutes. You're just like, it's fine. Don't worry about it. We'll see you tomorrow. Have pizza. Let me give pizza. Yeah. Oh, I swear to God, I'm gonna go in the other room.
So I gave her strawberries and a bunch of breakfast, and then we took her in the emergency room.
Rebecca,
and then,
I'm gonna go smother my wife with a pillow, and then I'm gonna come back and make a serious proposition to you, okay? Because I am tired of having my feet held to the fire.
I think my husband would have a problem with that.
Well, I could take him down. He's got a higher A1C. I think I can get him. No, but okay. So you're at the hospital with her. You don't know what to expect. I also
and it's COVID. So that's the other thing. I was like, I didn't run to the hospital because it's the middle of COVID, and
no,
I thought COVID would be way worse than diabetes at this point. But they got us right in. Her blood sugar was like 495. So like after that breakfast.
Yeah, what'd you have for breakfast again?
I don't know, strawberries and I don't even know.
Yeah, just cereal. Pure sugar, right from Jesus.
Pure sugar. Yeah. Now she can't even eat cereal, so it's.
I was thinking when you saw the 260 number, your husband was probably like, "That's fine."
Yeah.
By the way, Zoe and Roxy are the girls I'm thinking of. It's episode
Zoe and Roxy. Okay.
Episode 376 and a follow-up episode 522. If you don't listen to them and think, "Oh, I live across the street from those people," I'm going to be completely surprised. Although I think they're from Vermont, but at this point, I'm thinking this is all the same thing. So
it's all the same thing. That's what a lot of people think. It's all the same. So they got us right in, and then they did a saline drip and did some labs, and fed her a hot dog. It was really surreal. And then the pediatrician comes in, and she's like, "Well, she's not in DKA. She's and she said your husband has type 1, so you know what to do. We're going to give you Humalog and Basaglar and discharge you." And I was like, "Wait, what?" And they actually said, "Well, your husband is type 1. He knows what to do." And they gave us one of those carb counting sheets with how to do a calculation for both your carb insulin and your correction insulin. And then they FaceTimed with my husband, and it was like a test. Like, could he fill it out?
Okay.
And basically, I guess we passed.
Could he?
Like, he did. Yeah, we passed. We could do the math. They gave us a really preliminary ratio, like carb ratio and correction factor. And
I have to tell you,
we passed the test. I can do math. Great, thank you.
I'm surprised the two of you are alive. What do you think of that?
And then they discharged us, and they're like, "Well, follow up with endo on Monday." I was like, "Okay." So we had 2 days of just like giving my daughter insulin and
not really knowing why or how or anything like that.
Well, we knew. We follow. We knew how to count carbs. We knew how to give insulin, but I was terrified. I think I poked her finger every hour because I was like, "Wait a minute! Like, what if she?" But honestly, it was such a really preliminary ratio that it barely got her in the 200s the whole weekend.
Right.
And I guess that's what they want to do. They want to bring you down slowly.
Right. Well,
so you don't
I'm
have
amazed.
a seizure.
Yeah, I'm amazed. I'm amazed at how after all this time, it's just really fascinating. After all this time with your husband, like you really had the exact kind of like experience that everybody has when their kid's diagnosed. Like you're just like, I don't know what I'm doing. Please don't trust me with any of this. And
But he did. Like when we got home, I was at the ER with him because they only allow one person in the ER. Right. I was at the ER with my daughter. We're FaceTiming with him occasionally. And then when I got home, then he's like, he taught her how to give an injection. My daughter has watched injections her whole life. So that didn't freak her out. Poking her kind of freaked her out. I think the worst part for her was the finger stick, like, doing the tests.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Do you think, was there any comfort in it for her that her dad had it?
Yeah, I think she, she's like, we're the same now. And she was 7.
Yeah. What does she think now?
I think she was let's say that again.
A year later, is it still strike her the same way, you think?
I think so. I think the novelty is worn off for her. So she was on MDI for like 6 months. And then, of course, I listened to the podcast. So I did that 30-day trial for DASH. So we did the DASH.
Thank you.
Starting in January. I know my sister calls me fangirl because I like literally listen to all your ads.
Oh.
She's like, is there an ad that you haven't like bought into? Because I did the Trialnet because of you. And then I was really mad because my son
I'm the reason your kid's going to get diabetes one day?
Yeah.
Well, okay. Well, hey, first of all, tell your sister, shut up. Because if I don't do the ads, you don't get the podcast. So I don't know what she thinks I'm doing over here, but I got bills too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
so we did DASH with her. We did the 30-day trial with DASH. And then when Omnipod 5 came out, we had just changed insurances and I was like, oh, they're not going to cover it. And they covered it right off as soon as it was available in May, June, and we got it 1st of July.
Good. Wow.
Stuck it on her. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's finish up Although I am going to ask about your sister at some point. By the way, I meant to get to the Omnipod 5 like a half an hour ago, but I swear to you, I love you. So we could just chat like this forever. Doesn't matter to me if we ever talk about Omnipod 5. So let me just make sure I understand the timeline. Your daughter was on MDI for
6 months or so.
6 months or so. On to Dash, Omnipod Dash. By the way, I don't usually do this, but omnipod.com/juicebox. And then from Dash in July, which is now August, September, about 3 or 4 months ago, you started Omnipod 5.
Yep.
Okay. Then obviously it's the first algorithm. You guys are an amazing test case because you've never used it before. She's fairly newly diagnosed. How are you finding it? How was the transition from Dash to Omnipod 5?
I jumped for joy because we weren't getting great. So she came out of honeymoon, or I guess she's still technically honeymooning, but in December, she was still on MDI and she went from 10 units a day to 20 units a day in a couple weeks. And it was like a train wreck. We could not get her numbers down. And then she started Dash the next month. And we got it better, but we still, that first A1C in March was 7. She was 6.6 on MDI. And then I think the combination of coming out of honeymoon and just figuring out the pump, she went up to 7. And I feel like on Dash, we kind of figured it out, but we still were fighting with her, getting her basal right and getting that. She gets a lot of every nighttime spikes for hormones. She's grown 4 inches in the last year.
Yeah.
It's, I feel like we got great results with Dash. It was just a lot of fiddling. And it's just a lot of work, a lot of thinking. And then when we went to Omnipod 5 in July, I felt like I could breathe again because I wasn't up all night correcting. I wasn't, then you'd overshoot and have to then correct lows. I feel like Omnipod 5 really gets all those lows. It also is just simpler. The system is simpler. So I like in automatic mode, it takes away your temp basal and extended bolus, because then just caregiving is easier, both on my part and then when we give our caregiving to the school and to family members. All I have to tell them is put in her carbs, and if she beeps high, try a correction on the pump. And it's very simple. And then you always teach them how to deal with low blood sugar. But the system itself is just simple. There's one button. I feel like then that's probably how they designed it. It's just really simple.
No, they made it for you. They really did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Seriously.
They made it for me and caregiving. Caregiving, I know you can definitely get better numbers by fiddling, but you really, if you need simplicity in your life, this is by far so simple. Coming from the Dash to the Omnipod 5. And we're getting better results for way less effort. I mean, I feel like if we fiddled more, we could get her into the low 6s or 5s, but I was ecstatic with the 6.5. Just
No, I
so much less
understand.
work.
I understand. And I actually, first of all, there's no judgment for anybody's desires about their health. Whatever you are shooting for is fine with me. But I've been making the point, I think, for years now, while some people argue with me, well, I don't know. There's a hierarchy. It's a drop-down list of how hard people want to work or how much effort they want to put in. You know what I mean? There's different people. Some people are fiddling constantly and they're happy to be involved in that. Some people would prefer for it not to be so intensive. And some people would like it to just be look, this thing does the thing and I let it go and whatever happens, happens. And I like that. Everyone is represented in here. And I think Omnipod 5 is set up exactly for that. It is set up for people like you who are look, I can't, I can't be fiddling with this thing constantly. Let it make some of the decisions. Yep. And I think you're the majority, Rebecca.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love for it to be, we still correct a lot, especially at night. It does not keep up with those hormone spikes. We correct between 9 and 12 at night, every hour and a half, 2 hours, just to keep on top of it. Cause it can't handle that. And I know it's for safety reasons. It's not going to dump. Cause when she was on Dash, her basal between 9 p.m. and 12 p.m. was 5 times her day basal.
Yeah. Oh no. Oh my God. Arden, like I said earlier, I don't know if it's when we were recording or not, but Arden's at school and sick right now and has her period. And over the last 3 days, I've given her she and I have together talked about and given amounts of insulin that no one would tell you to do. Right. And most of the time that's just keeping her under 200.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and the algorithm based on your settings would it never know. Like, you can say,
Right.
like I interviewed somebody yesterday using the 670G, 68. I for Jesus, why does Medtronic name their stuff like that? Like, why not just call it something like Shazam so I know what the hell it is? But it's whatever their newest algorithm is that's available only overseas right now. And as I'm talking to her, the girl goes, look, you still have to be involved in these things. She's like, I'm afraid people think you're going to put an algorithm on and never have to be involved again. That's not the case. It doesn't matter if it's Tandem, Control IQ, Omnipod 5, the Medtronic, you need to be involved. It's just the level that you need to be involved changes pretty significantly. And
it does.
If we're being honest, hormones are tough. So it could end up being easier for prepubescent kids and men, I'm guessing, over women who get their periods. So, anyway, but it sounds like you love it.
I do love it. I mean, there's some things the hormone spikes I can't handle. I don't love the activity mode on it. We don't use that. It's a little too, it brings the target up to 150. And then I think it lowers the algorithm or makes the algorithm less strong. We actually use, when she goes, my daughter's a dancer and she's sometimes at dance class for like 5 or 6 hours, and we'll just move her target to like 130 for that period of time.
Yeah. So
and move it back when they're done.
Yeah. The activity's too aggressive. So you pick a higher target instead of the one that.
Right. So she's at 110 most of the time. And then we do 130 for dance. And it seems to work. That we tried the activity mode a couple times and she would go 180, 200 and just kind of creep up.
Yeah. Too much.
Too much, but it works. That little tweak worked, and it's a little bit of a pain because if you forget about it, you're like, wait, why is she creeping up?
So when do you turn it on? Prior to dance, or when dance starts, or how do you handle that?
Prior to dance, usually on the way there, I'll just go into the target glucose setting in there, and I'll just roll it up to 130. And then usually when she gets home, I'll roll it back to 110. Nice. But that's a manual thing. You can't put a timer on that. I guess you can put time slots, but she doesn't have dance every day. So I do it manually.
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't know that. You could time slot targets? You
can, yeah. Oh. Yeah, you can. So you can have like a different overnight target, different school target.
How do I not know that? That's a great feature.
Yeah.
Yeah, except you're saying you can't use it in this specific situation because she doesn't dance every day.
If she had dance every day at 4 o'clock, I could. Yeah. But she doesn't. So.
Okay, so, all right. So now you have like a year's worth of experience with diabetes, and you said her A1C is like 6.5. Mm-hmm. That's excellent. Jack has how many? The
original Trialnet, finger pick poke said 3 antibodies, and then when the Joslin Diabetes Center in Boston called us, we came down for like a follow-up, and they ended up finding 5 antibodies. So that was like 3 months later. And now he's in the pathway to prevention study, which is, so he goes he was going every 3 months. Now he's going every 6 months, where they do an oral glucose tolerance test. Every time we go down, it's a 2-hour test where he drinks 100-gram glucose drink. And then they test his blood sugar throughout the 2 hours. And, the first time we did it, I thought I had another diabetic because they came back with his post 2-hour glucose was 200. And I guess if you have 2 of those tests at 200 in a row, that's diagnostic, clinically diagnosed as diabetic. And I was like, oh. But that was in March. They brought us back a month later because they're like, we need to redo it because if he is diabetic, we know you need to go see the endo. So we went back. He did the oral glucose tolerance test again. He was 173, which after the 2 hours, which is impaired glucose, which is like, I don't know if you've had people talk about the 3 phases of diabetes onset, but phase 1 is just antibodies. Phase 2 is antibodies and impaired glucose. And then phase 3 is clinical diagnosis. So he was kind of in that phase 2 in April when he went back. And they're like, well, we'll have him back in 3 months. He's not diabetic yet, but just, watch him. If anything happens, you know what to do. Call the ER. Right. Now I would go to the ER. And then we just went in September and did his test. And his 2-hour oral glucose tolerance test was 130, which is normal. And his A1C was also normal.
Go ahead.
So the only thing we added after talking to the endocrinologist at Joslin is we added vitamin D, a high dose vitamin D, and we added some high dose of fish oil, which there are some case reports that say it can extend honeymoon, and it can also extend, if you're predisposed, can not prevent onset, but like delay onset.
Okay.
So at this point, we're just kind of trying to delay onset with whatever we can. He's 12, so if the endocrinologist said if we could get through puberty, that spike of hormones at puberty, get him on the other side of puberty before he's diagnosed, we'll just be in a better place.
Helpful.
So that's where we're at now. We're just, he takes vitamin D and fish oil. We get our oral glucose tolerance test every 3 months. And
well, I have a question. When you tell him this, how does he respond?
He at first was like, I'm not going to do a study. Like, he was 11 at the time. And, yeah, I mean, he's a classic gamer kid, 11. He was like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And I'm like, well, Jack, I mean, originally we posed it as this study, you might be able to prevent type 1. Because at the time, we thought he might be able to get into one of the clinical trials for the prevention drugs that are out there.
Yeah.
So that's how we posed it to him. We're like, hey, if we can do these tests, maybe you can qualify for some medicine that would then prevent type 1 from happening. And then you wouldn't get type 1 like Dad and Kate. So, and then he was like, oh yeah, let's do that. And now he was a little unsure about the first oral glucose tolerance test because they had to put an IV in, but now he's pretty used to it. We've been down there 3 times and he's pretty used to it. The vitamins, we tell him like, again, the vitamins might delay or prevent diabetes, but we're not sure. Again, I'm not holding out hope like this is like a magical cure, but
no,
at this point, anything that helps.
Yeah, no, I understand. I'm wondering more about he knows he's at some point in his life likely going to get diabetes.
Yes.
But what's that like? I'm sure you had to tell him that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're still at the point where like, you don't have diabetes yet. That's what we keep telling him.
Right.
And then we're going to do everything we can to prevent that, but we might not be able to. And that's what we tell him. I'm like, we're not, I'm not going to, I never posed it like you're going to get diabetes because of this, because that would terrify an 11-year-old. But
no, I'm wondering if like he's using his kind of, like his age and his ability to just go like, anything 15 minutes or longer from now is in the future. So
yeah,
I don't think about it. Or do you think it, like, have you seen any like impacts on his psyche, I guess is what I'm wondering.
No. And he's a really anxious kid. That's part of the reason why we talk about it the way we do is he has like generalized anxiety. So he has anxiety about things. So we talk about it. We give him the facts, but I'm not going to worry him unnecessarily.
Sure. No, I wouldn't expect you to. I'm just wondering how he responded. That's all. And
he's fine. I mean, he seems fine about it. He likes his trips to Joslin. We get a Subway sandwich afterward. I think that's probably why he likes it. I mean, we have Subway in our town. Don't think we live so far away from real life that we don't have Subway in our town.
These people think Subway is a treat. That's what you're worried people are going to think right now?
Yeah. So, no, he seems, honestly, we've talked about it, but I think he just doesn't want to think about it. Like, no, I think he's, again, like what you said, like, it's not going to happen to him today, so he's not going to think about it.
Right. No, that's how I imagine it would go, honestly. I just was wondering.
And when it happens, it happens. We're not, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
We'll deal with it with what it comes.
We'll deal with it by getting a part-time job to pay for all
the
stuff. Oh my God.
I was like, do they have like a punch card? Well, at this point, my daughter and my husband are on the same, they're both on Novolog and they both have Dexcom. So we kind of just interchange supplies.
Just a pile of supplies.
Yeah. And actually, over the summer, I plopped an old Libre on Jack just to see. And I wore one too, because I was like, hey, if you wear one, I'll wear one. And it was fascinating. He actually he didn't get over 100 the whole summer. And he was eating. He eats like a typical 11-year-old, 12-year-old.
How were your blood sugars when you were looking?
Mine are low. I like barely get over 70, just sitting around. And then, I might get to 90 if I really try.
Yeah. That's something.
Wow. It is crazy. Actually, that really helps you kind of understand how the body works. And I never really freaked out about 70, but like, I really don't freak out about 70 anymore.
No, I think wearing a CGM, if you don't have diabetes, gives you a lot of insight into what your goals are when you're managing insulin.
It is.
Yeah.
And those spikes are normal. Like, okay, yes, my daughter and husband spike way more than I do, but like, I don't have a flat line either. Like, I go up 30, 50 points and come back down. Like,
yeah.
Well, I feel like that's pretty normal. Like,
yeah, I think the idea about avoiding spikes with diabetes isn't that you are so worried if a blood sugar goes to 140. The problem is that the 140 turns into 180 and the 180 turns into 220.
If it stays there, I get worried about if it stays there. Like if it goes up, comes right back down.
Right. I
don't get too worked up about this quote spike. It's if it goes up and stays there, then I'm like, wait, we messed something up.
Yeah, I think of the spikes more as indicators for, like, generally speaking, how well I'm doing with the insulin.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's...
And then the hit of the food, like, we've kind of dialed my daughter's breakfast into just a handful of things that we know she doesn't really go over 150. Because I just can't send her to school with her, like, pushing 200. Because when she gets over 200, she just is not in a good learning space. So we have a handful of foods that, she eats bagels and waffles and English muffins or whatever for breakfast. But we know how to dose for them. And I can, she just goes up to 140, 150, comes right back down and hangs out 110 pretty much all day long.
Yeah, well, that's cool. It's amazing.
And so that Omnipod 5 is really great for that. And then I know, like, I'm not worried about it overshooting on the bottom end, like, maybe going down to 70, because I know Omnipod will kind of dial down or basal if I missed it,
How many like serious lows has she had on Omnipod 5?
Oh God, I don't even think she had one actually a couple of days ago, but we were in the car and we ate McDonald's. I mean, we eat really healthy stuff, right? We were having McDonald's on the way home from visiting my brother, and she was like, I'm going to have a cookie too. So we dosed for the McDonald's and the cookie, and she didn't actually end up eating the cookie. And we got home and she hit 70, and I'm like, oh, have a glucose tab. And then she kept going. I'm like, what is going on? And we finally started going back through her dosing. And then I saw a 26 carb dose that my husband put in while I was driving. And I was like, what was this 26 carbs? And he's like, oh, that was a cookie. And I'm like, Kate, did you eat the cookie? And she's like, no. And I'm like, oh, well, there it is. You have 26 carbs floating around. Oh, we gave you insulin for 26 carbs. We now know. But so that wasn't an Omnipod problem. That was us misdose,
right.
That was a misdose that she didn't eat the cookie.
Rebecca,
but other than that, no. like
that's
she's
it. Well, that's great. So, I mean, that's not a low. That's you guys bolusing too much. But
exactly.
Yeah.
But all the lows, I think she's had a couple that might hit the low 60s.
Mm-hmm.
We do a glucose tab. Actually, that's what we've learned from you. Like, what they say you need 15 grams of carbs. I'm like, okay, a 7-8-year-old does not need 15 grams of carbs.
Well, it depends on the situation.
She gets one.
Yeah, right. It's
one glucose tab usually is what does it for her. Sometimes we need a juice box if it's like a down arrow, a double down arrow. Then
it depends on the situation. Also, this sucks that this cookie story was about your daughter, because I was going to respond, Rebecca, don't you hate it when they don't eat the cookie? But it seemed so inappropriate because it was about your daughter, so I let it go. But I am bringing it up now because it delighted me. That's all.
No, I feel like Omnipod 5. That's like, if lows are an issue, that's where it shines. That's
I agree.
The fact that it could just dial down and it will dial down the basal away from the controller, which is even great. Like, she was at the water park this summer, away from me, away from all our devices, and it just did its thing. Like, it would, like, she's going down water slides and she's in the water and it's talking to the Dexcom the whole time. And
it can't be said enough that the algorithm lives on the pod. And the pod and the Dexcom are talking to each other, and the controller or any other accoutrements, which there are none of, but the controller does not need to be anywhere near those two devices for them to work.
Yes. Yeah. And that's one of my favorite parts. Like, she does not need to be tied to anything. So,
yeah,
we just put those stretchy wraps around it when she's in the water and let her go.
That's that. Excellent. Look at you. You've got this all figured out now. You went from not knowing anything to really being on top of this.
Well, sometimes. Well, I have to say, this podcast has helped. A friend of mine, it was like a friend of a friend, that Sunday that she was diagnosed, texted me on Facebook and was like, oh, my friend's son is diabetic. You should talk to her. So I messaged her and she's like, you need to listen to the Juicebox podcast. I was like, what the heck's the Juicebox podcast? So, I started listening to it that Sunday. So she had been diagnosed the day before.
Yeah.
And actually that Monday we went into the endo's office and I actually had heard a Dexcom ad, and we went into the endo's office that Monday and they're like, what do you need? I'm like, I need a Dexcom.
Oh, Rebecca, I appreciate you saying that. This is for all the sponsors. And again, I know you're listening. I don't get credit when Rebecca goes in the doctor's office and buys Dexcom, or when she gets an Omnipod 5 from the endo, but I still sold it. So don't call me and hawk me in China about clicks, okay? I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Rebecca.
Oh, I didn't even know. I knew about Libre because my husband had gotten a Libre years before. So I knew about Libre. And actually, I was like, I'm going to go in and ask for Libre. I didn't even know Dexcom existed. And then when I had heard I listened to a couple of the newly diagnosed episodes. And I was like, oh, this Dexcom thing sounds awesome.
Okay. Yeah. I'm going to edit this out and send it to people. So they leave me the hell alone. You understand? Listen, the advertisers are fantastic. I have a really good relationship with them. There's this one aspect of it that it's not quantifiable.
You can't capture that.
Yeah, and it can't be captured. And we all agree that it can't be captured. But then when it comes time to pay, some of them are like, well, what about the clicks? And I'm like, well, what about the agreement we have that I'm probably selling a ton of them in the freaking doctor's office? And they go, oh, yeah, I know. But I can't show that to my boss. And I'm like, I don't care. So anyway, that's basically the conversation. You people don't know how much work I put into keeping this podcast going is what I'm telling you. And it it's upsetting sometimes.
Well, obviously the ads work because I'm like, I think I've clicked on everything you've ever sold. So.
Yeah. Hey, have you gotten Athletic Greens yet? I just started with them. It's athleticgreens.com/juicebox.
See, look, I'm doing all this work for you. You don't even have to do ads for this show.
I really do appreciate that. No, listen, I won't go into a long conversation about it, but because I still want to ask about your sister, but you don't know. It seems like you pick up your phone and there's a guy talking to you, but I work about 70 hours a week on this podcast. I can't have a job. The ads have to work. And then the advertisers have to keep coming back. You know what I mean? Like it's year after year, or as soon as they don't come back, it's over. And that's, so there's a lot of pressure on my side to keep everybody happy. And I don't take ads from just anybody. I could do that and it would make my life easier, but I don't. So I stick with products that I know are great, that I know you guys need. And then it's just, there's a whole business side to this that I hate. Obviously, if you listen to me long enough, I really am. I'm not cut out to be in business. I'm cut out to make this podcast. So I was in a meeting the other day and it ended. Try to imagine I was in a meeting with two people from a PR company that work for a company. And then I was also in that meeting were two people from the company. I know that's hard to understand, but there's a company. I was meeting with them. They hire a PR company to manage stuff that happens. We're setting up an episode that I think is going to be great for you guys. And we're talking about how it's going to get set up and regulatory things and what can't be said and like these just mind-numbing meetings. And it ended, and I realized that I had said fuck twice in that meeting. Because I don't belong in business, is what I'm saying.
Well, it's obviously working. I mean, I wish they could count. You should do a survey. Like, how many of you have gone to your endo asking for a Dexcom or Omnipod?
Yeah, that's
because of the show.
That's your math brain. But what'll happen is the number will come back and they'll only want to pay for that number. And I'll be like, well, the whole world didn't hear the survey. And they'll be like, So there's no way to get around this. It actually, in their defense, it's an unwinnable situation because they give me a link and they can track the link and I can't.
Yeah.
And then I have a link that I can track, but if you guys type it into a browser, then I'm not tracking it either. So I have no leverage either. It's just a very weird position to be in. But it obviously works because, I mean, this podcast is freaking huge. I don't want to be argued with, is what I'm saying. Rebecca, don't trifle with me. All right. Not you, them. All right. Now, your sister, diagnosed at 30 years old. Is that right?
Yeah, well, just before she turned 30, January of this year. It was it was funny because at Christmas time, I saw her at Christmas, so just a week before she was diagnosed, and we're having Christmas. We do Christmas Eve with all the siblings, and we were having big meal, and she was complaining how thirsty she was, and I was joking. I was like, "Well, I have Kate's meter. Do you want me to test your blood sugar?" And she's like, "Ha ha." Because I obviously, she's like, you think everyone has diabetes. And I'm like, no, really, I'll test you. And she's like, no, I'm fine. And then she texts me, it's the 4th of January. And she texts me, she's like, I'm at my primary care. My A1C is 14. I have diabetes. I was like, what?
You didn't
And they
go,
were like, they're
I
sending.
told you.
Yeah. Well, I was like, well, if you'd listened to me, well, then they would have ruined her Christmas, right? Um, um, but I was like, and she's like, they're sending me to the ER. I was like, well, and her husband is a technician. He works like in the northern part of Maine. So he's not there during the week. He's only there on weekends. And I knew her husband was probably 4 or 5 hours away. I'm like, do you need someone to meet you at the ER? And she's like, that would be great. So she was sent to the ER, and I live 2 hours away. So I started driving. I dropped my daughter off at dance class. I got in the car. I texted her. I was like, while you're waiting, listen to this podcast. And I actually texted her your first, newly diagnosed episode. It's like, while you're waiting, listen to this episode.
Episode 210, Rebecca, is the most popular episode in the
So I texted
podcast.
her that, said I'm like, and actually I listened to your podcast on the way up as well, the 2-hour drive. I didn't listen to that episode, but I listened to a couple other ones. And I met her. I met some. Well, it's COVID again. I got to the ER. The nurse comes out. She's like, she's okay. She's on a saline drip. I've never seen this before. And I'm looking at this nurse, and I'm like, she's crazy. And she's like, never in my 30 years have I seen this before. And I'm like, what are you talking about? A woman with a high blood sugar? Like, yeah. She's like, no, no, I don't know what, my sister is tiny. She's like 110 pounds. So they basically diagnosed her with type 2 diabetes, 110 pounds, 400 blood sugar, 14 A1C, type 2 diabetes. And I'm like, are you sure? Mm-hmm. They're like, so when they finally discharged her, they're like, they said, I have type 2 diabetes. They want me to go get a meter and make an appointment with an endo. And I was like, that doesn't sound right. Like that just,
right.
So literally I picked her up. We went and got sushi. We picked up a meter at CVS and we went home, and I'm like, you need to call the endo like what time they open, 7 a.m. in the morning, and demand that you go see them, because this doesn't sound right. Your blood sugars are really high and they're not coming down. This does not sound like type 2 diabetes. I mean, we have a couple type 2 diabetics in our family, our family, right. My father-in-law's a type 2. I'm like, this doesn't sound like type 2. And like the acute onset of it does not sound like type 2. So go see an endo. So that next morning, I stayed overnight at her house. Next morning, she got into the endo. I went with her, but her husband actually finally got home and went to the endo with her, but that was the only person that could go in. I waited in the waiting room. And I guess the endo was one of these, I don't want to swear, but like a-hole endos that just literally came in hot, was like, you don't have diabetes. And she's like, what? Like, my A1C is 14. My blood sugar is over 400. What do I have? He said it's due to steroids, because she was getting steroid injections for a bulging disc. And there is you can get hyperglycemia from steroids.
Yeah. But 400?
Yeah. And I was like, well, okay, well, if that's it, fine. But she had actually been having some eyesight issues over for 3 to 6 months. She like explained some other symptoms she'd been having for 3 to 6 months prior.
Because her blood sugar's been high for 6 months.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think finally by the end of the conversation, he did labs and he did prescribe insulin. Okay. He did actually do full antibody workup, and she did leave with Humalog and Basaglar.
Wow.
Or Lantus.
How is she doing right now? What does she use? How's she doing? Does she still listen to the podcast?
She does. She actually, I think, is on your schedule for February.
Oh, cool.
She does, because she actually she's doing okay. She got rid of that endo because he was just not helpful at all. He gave her a sliding scale, just really crazy stuff. She does have 3 antibodies, so yeah, she's type 1 diabetic. She's actually in the Topple study now. She's actually at Beth Israel Deaconess today, getting her. It's a 48-hour observation period after your first injection of the plasmids. So she's we're a big sciencey family. So she's a PhD candidate, and she's like, I'll do any trial that would, help out the situation. So
I want to say that
she's in the Topple study.
I'm pushing that right now. Trialnet is paying me to push that right now.
Yeah. So she just got her first infusion, and it's supposed to slow or stop the immune system from attacking her beta cells, because she actually still has quite a bit of beta cell function. She's been honeymooning pretty hard. Okay. After that acute diagnosis where she was on quite a bit of insulin. Now she's down to like 10 units a day.
Mm-hmm.
And but she's pushing like an A1C of 5.8. Like she's doing great. She's on a Dexcom.
Good for her.
And now she's doing this topple study. She really hopes that, because it was as an adult onset, and just having that endo experience and like the nurse telling her that she's crazy and she's never seen anything like it before. I mean, she just had a much different diagnosis story than we had with my daughter. My daughter was very cut and dry. They were super nice. They were the endocrinologists and the diabetic educators we saw were fabulous, and we got great care. And I feel like maybe where she lives, or maybe just the endocrinologist she saw and her age, they just treated her completely different. Like, you're not a diabetic, and we're going to give you a sliding scale. I'm like, a sliding scale? Like, what?
Yeah,
who does that?
I know. Well, here's what you've brought up. Don't go to the hospital in the woods. That's the first thing. Okay. Also, sushi in Maine, how is that?
Oh, it's not bad.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That threw me for a loop when you were like,
we have a lot of great seafood, and we're right on the coast. Great ports.
Yeah,
great
imports. I assume the seafood part and that I got, but I wasn't sure about sushi. And the most important thing you've said today that people should take away from this, honestly, is listen to the ads. I really think that's your best message.
Oh, thanks, Scott. I'm glad I talked for an hour, and that's what.
No,
that's what you got out of my conversation.
No, I'm fascinated by the trajectory and about it all being around you but not being you.
It's not me, yeah. So now my sister, I chat. So my sister says I'm like her support system, because they really, again, she doesn't have a great support system. This is new to her. She's like, you're the most knowledgeable person I know about diabetes. I'm like, really?
Listen, you're in trouble. Let me just tell you right now.
I know, because I was like, obviously 6 months or 18 months ago, I knew nothing. So,
right.
But she's she's actually created her own little Facebook group for adults with diabetes in Maine. She has like 20 people or so, just because she's like, the support system for adults is just not existent. And she would be a great. I hope she does end up going on your show, because she'd be a great person to chat about. Well, her topple study alone would probably be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, if she's on the schedule, then she's there.
Yeah, and
I would like to hear about that study 100%. But we're not be pimping out her Facebook group. What are you trying to take people from me? I only have 30. She's got.
I think 20? She has 20 people.
Well, I have 30,000, and I can't afford to lose them. Okay. No, I'm just. That's nice. I think that those local groups are really wonderful, because then people.
Yeah, I think they're hoping to actually get together and chat in person.
That's what I was going to say, because they can actually. I mean, like, for them, they'd have to get on 4-wheelers and pickup trucks and probably spend a couple days going to a centralized location. But it's nice to be local to somebody and be actually able to meet them in person. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
No, that really is cool. All right. Well, this was good, Rebecca. You did a good job. Yeah. Do you feel like you did a good job?
I think so.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're still nervous?
No.
No? Good.
Do you have any more questions for
me? You don't want to go. Okay.
No.
Hold on, Rebecca. Let me get a drink, and then we'll figure something else out. All right, we'll do.
I'm good. I'm good.
No, let's do one more thing. You want to do one more thing?
Sure.
All right. Hold on. I want to go back to the part where you said this is your husband's mother's problem. I love that. That was my favorite part of the podcast so far. So, if your daughter gets married to a guy who doesn't understand her diabetes, will you be okay with that?
I think so. As long as he understands like the highs and lows, like the
emergency
things
stuff
that she can't, the things that she can't take care of.
Okay, because I just did an interview with somebody recently. It's not out yet, but it'll be out well before yours is, where the woman in the relationship needed emergency help. She was basically in bed with a low, but thought, how did this go? Her pump was beeping at her. She thought it was because the cartridge was low or empty. The husband was leaving for work early in the morning. She stops him and says, "Hey, can you please fill up my cartridge and bring it to me? I don't feel like going and doing it." He does that, and when he comes back, he finds her fairly unresponsive. And so he knows enough to hit her with glucagon, but then doesn't do any of the things afterwards that needed to be done. So he like hits her with the glucagon and then goes out into the other part of the house to call his work to be like, hey, I'm going to be late. My wife needs help with stuff. Like it was that low energy. Did not call 911. Didn't really even like go back and sit with her. Just thought of it as, I know this sounds horrible to people who understand it better, but keep in mind, he really thought he was doing what he was supposed to do. He didn't understand like the bigger impacts that could have happened. And I'm just saying, I don't know. I think everybody needs to know.
Yeah, I think you definitely need to know what could happen. Like the worst case scenario, how to deal with those.
Right.
How to give glucagon. What, if you're unresponsive, stay with me. Come on.
Well, to you, that seems obvious, but you said things today that sounded obvious to other people that you didn't know about. And this is my point is that, I understand not wanting people to be up in your business. But I mean, once you're married, like, I don't know. I think you just have to just be open about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I hope. And unless you can get your mother-in-law to help your husband with something, and then I think that's genius, by the way, and just to keep her involved. Although you don't want that, right?
Oh God, no. No, she's a wonderful woman.
No. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry. You misunderstood me, but that was hilarious. What I meant was when your son is 35 years old, you don't want to be in charge of something about his life, right?
True.
Mm-hmm.
But also, like, again, you're an adult. Like, you could definitely take care of 90% or even 95% of your diabetes. Like, you got to give people credit. Like, most
100%.
people, most adults with diabetes can take care of their stuff. Like, it's really just even 5%, probably less than 1% of the time you're going to need help.
Help? And, you mean like emergency help?
Emergency help, or like a reminder or whatnot.
Well, let me play devil's advocate for a minute. Your husband talked about being burned out for a long time. What if you had some of the burden? Maybe he would not have burned out like that. Is that possible?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, you really, the dynamic relationship, you have to be conscious of that. If your wife nagged you constantly, would you about something?
Wait, if?
Oh, you say she does?
It's her whole job.
It's just not my personality to nag.
No, it's not a nag. Nag's the wrong word. Constant input on what I'm doing and why it's wrong.
What's the difference?
I don't know. Constant input. Like, why are you doing
constant
it like
input?
That? Do this over now. If I mention something to her, if I'd be like, hey, why are you doing it like that? She'll, judging me. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
I mean, I can't even count on one. Like, I can count, probably 10,000 times where I'm like, hey, did you take your insulin? Did you take your insulin? Like, yes. But I wasn't like, what's your A1C? What's your blood sugar right now? Like, I wasn't sitting over his shoulder while he was poking his finger, No,
look, I'm not judging. First of all, I'm not judging you. And I'm not saying there's a right way to do it. I'm just asking questions. That's all. Yeah. I just, I don't know. I feel like, when you're, and again, I didn't know what I didn't know. Like, yeah, no, I know you're a much more informed person today than you were a year and a half ago, for sure.
Oh, sure. Yeah. And actually, even it says, he's like, well, and then he's like, you get it now. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't have diabetes, so I don't fully get it, but caregiving for someone with diabetes at the level you need to care for a child, I definitely get, well, that's what all the numbers mean and all the.
Yeah, but that's an interesting statement from him. Did he think, why am I going to bother sharing it with somebody who doesn't understand it?
Maybe. I'd also, I'm a sciencey person. I probably would understand it if he wanted me to, like if he wanted to share that much with me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, we'll blame him. This is his fault. I got you. All right. Yeah.
I like it.
He should have asked, damn it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can edit this all out.
No, what are you kidding me? This is fantastic. He's not going to listen to this. And your sister's not going to tell him. She hates him anyway. I mean, not hates him, but.
No, he doesn't. Actually, I've sent him a couple episodes about complications and other things. And he sad to say, does not listen.
Are you Catholic, Rebecca?
I am not. My mother is. So maybe I have this
I like the way you're
Catholic guilt.
Yeah. You're like, I could guilt him remotely with a podcast. This would work.
Maybe I listen to this one.
How many of you are using the podcast to guilt people digitally? Is that happening? Jesus.
I have sent him several. I'm like, there was one with a dad on it that I was like, you'd get this. because he was a stay-at-home dad for a long time. I was like, this guy's a stay-at-home dad. You might get him.
This guy's a freeloader too? No, I'm just kidding. I was a stay-at-home dad forever.
Not anymore. He was a stay-at-home dad when our kids were little, though.
Oh, that's nice. He seems like a good guy.
Yeah.
I'd be thrilled to talk to your husband.
Yeah, I don't know if I could convince him.
There's no way he'd do it, but
not a chance.
Doesn't need to be him. Any guy like your husband.
You go through all his dark ages of diabetes and all the crazy things he did in his 20s, and not having the information because there were no CGMs.
Sure. No, I mean even just the overall attitude towards diabetes. I'd love to pick through that with somebody who's had it for decades. I think it's interesting. So anyway. All right. Well, Rebecca, you were terrific. Thank you very much for doing this. I really do appreciate it. Would you hold on for one moment for me?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Well, let's thank Rebecca for coming on the show and sharing her story. And of course, we want to thank the sponsors, Dexcom, makers of the Dexcom G7, dexcom.com/juicebox. And US Med, usmed.com/juicebox, or call 888-721-1514. There are links in the show notes of all the audio players you're listening in right now, and at juiceboxpodcast.com to US Med, Dexcom, and all of the sponsors. When you click on those links, you're supporting the production of the show and helping to keep it free and plentiful. If you have type 2 or pre-diabetes, the Type 2 Diabetes Pro Tip series from the Juicebox Podcast is exactly what you're looking for. Do you have a friend or a family member who is struggling to understand their type 2 and how to manage it? This series is for them. 7 episodes to get you on track and up to speed. Episode 860, Series Intro. 864, Guilt and Shame. Episode 869, Medical Team. 874, Fueling Plan. Episode 880, Diabetes Technology. Episode 885, GLP-1s, metformin, and insulin. And in episode 889, we talk about movement. This episode is with me and Jenny Smith. Of course, you know Jenny is a certified diabetes care and education specialist. She's a registered and licensed dietitian, and Jenny has had type 1 diabetes for over 30 years. Too many people don't understand their type 2 diabetes, and this series aims to fix that. Share it with a friend, or get started today. Once there was a time when I just told people, if you want a low and stable A1C, just listen to the Juicebox Podcast. But as the years went on and the podcast episodes grew, it became more and more difficult for people to listen to every one. So I made the Diabetes Pro Tip series. This series is with me and Jenny Smith. Jenny is a certified diabetes care and education specialist. She's also a registered and licensed dietitian and a type 1 herself for over 30 years. And I, of course, am the father of a child who was diagnosed at age 2 in 2006. The Pro Tip series begins at episode 210 with an episode called Newly Diagnosed or Starting Over. And from there, all about MDI, pre-bolusing, insulin pumping, bumping and nudging, variables, exercise, illness, injuries, surgeries, glucagon, long-term health, bumping and nudging, how to explain type 1 to your family, postpartum, honeymoon, transitioning, all about insulin, temp basals. These are all different episodes. Setting your basal insulin, fat and protein, pregnancy, the glycemic index and load, and so much more, like female hormones and weight loss. Head now to juiceboxpodcast.com. Go up in the menu at the top and click on Diabetes Pro Tip. Or if you're in the private Facebook group, there's a list of these episodes right in the featured tab. Find out how I help keep my daughter's A1C between 5.2 and 6.2 for the last 10 years without diet restrictions. Juiceboxpodcast.com. Start listening today. It's absolutely free.